The AI really loves Fee in this book. Oink, wink. I literally had multiple angry old man shakes fist at sky moments while reading it. There was too much medieval in this book and not enough wizard go pew pew.
Hello everybody, I am Rue and welcome to my cozy corner of booktube, Rue with the Books.
If you are new here and you don't know what my talking book series is, well, it's basically a set of videos in which I talk about what I have recently read, what I am currently reading, as well as what I plan to read in the near future. I have a whole playlist of these videos if you are interested in going back and checking out the backlog, but watching any of the previous ones is not necessary at all to enjoy this video. I usually tend to talk about maybe 5 or 6 books in these videos, but January has been one hell of a reading month for me. And with the inclusion of 8 hours of public transport traveling over the course of 2 days, I managed to get 5 days worth of reading done in just those 8 hours and those 2 long train journeys. So welcome to the longest ever to-date Talking Books episode. In this video, I will be talking about the 10 books that I have read in January. If you consider yourself a little bit of a reader and you like booktube and booktube content, be sure to press the like button to support me, as well as subscribe to my channel. And maybe, if you're feeling extra spicy today, maybe even drop a comment down below. Every bit of engagement helps tremendously to grow my channel, and it's definitely a group effort. So if you could just take a quick moment to do any of those, or a combination of those, I would really appreciate it. Before I get into talking about all of these books, be sure to grab a nice hot beverage of some kind. It is winter after all, and we need a little bit of extra comfort to get through this depressing, cold, and grueling season. Anyway, without any further ado, let's talk about some books.
What have I read?
The next installment of Dungeon Crawler Carl sees Carl, Donut, and the rest of the crawlers on the 8th floor, where the theme of the floor is card games. Now, that sounds like a really cool premise, right? A lit RPG really leaning into the game stuff, going really meta, and opting into a specific genre of games, that being card games. When Carl, Donut, and Co. encounter powerful monsters on this floor, they have the option to stick a flag on the mobs and to turn them into cards, to then be able to kind of use them within the card battles on the floor. I did find that the execution on this was a bit of a mixed bag. I really liked the premise and would have enjoyed seeing Matt Dinneman really commit to the bit here, but there was a lot of cheating involved in these battles. I think considering the layout he had on this floor, it would have taken way too long to write all of these card battles with the kind of rigor that I was hoping for. So he opted to kind of lean into these card game mechanics only for like the far more major battles. If Carl, Donut, and Co. were able to straight up defeat an enemy without really engaging in the card battle mechanics, then they took the path of least resistance there and just smacked someone. My gripe here is that I would have enjoyed seeing more commitment, but I respect kind of cutting down some stuff because the book is already humongously long, and I think it is the longest Dungeon Crawler Carl book to date, as of the release of this inevitable ruin before the release of the Parade of Horribles. Aside from that, we get all of the hallmarks of a Dungeon Crawler Carl book. Silly and crude humor, brilliant character moments, level ups, loot boxes, achievements, ridiculous plans, plans going wrong, and then adapting on the fly to terrible situations and coming out of them as the best as one can. That's 8 separate things that I love about the series, and they're all in this book. We get some really solid story progression in terms of what is going on with the meta-narrative in this one too. I don't want to go into the specifics for risk of spoiling, and we don't do that here, unless explicitly stated. But what I can say is that what is kind of the setup of what is going to happen on the next floor is going to be absolutely bonkers. And I'm so unbelievably excited to continue my Dungeon Crawler Carl journey and see what happens next. There were some really, really stupid jokes in this book that, honestly, even for Matt Dinneman's kind of level, are just above and beyond. Yeah, for his standards. The AI really loves Fee in this book. Wink, wink. This was an absolutely brilliant book. Not my favorite in the series. My favorite is still The Butcher's Masquerade, but either way, this is a really, really enjoyable experience. There was lots of great moments from start to finish. I was absolutely hooked, and it was quite a page turner, which is pretty difficult considering the length of the book. So yeah, great book as I already said, and I rated this one 4 stars out of 5. I have mentioned over and over again on this channel that I have been desperately seeking a good post-apocalyptic novel to sink my teeth into. Well, to make do on my cravings and satiate that thirst for post-apocalyptic literature, I ended up choosing to read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, because I own it physically, as you see here. I picked this one up on the cheap for just £1 from an ex-library stock sale at my local library, so a bargain really. Now, to get onto my actual thoughts about this book, I'm going to put it bluntly and explain afterwards. I think it was a little bit of a disappointment, which is a shame because people really, really love Emily St. John Mandel's works, and I've heard really, really good things about this book. So it just didn't land for me. So what is Station 11 about? Well, a famous actor dies on stage while doing a live performance of King Lear by William Shakespeare. Just as this happens, a particularly fatal form of the flu sweeps the globe and Earth is dropped right into an epidemic. People that catch this strain of flu die within a matter of hours. It's extremely contagious and there isn't much hope. Cars get stuck in traffic, people decide to go on foot, and this causes the roads to become incredibly congested. People can't make it out of the cities they live in and stuff like that. The roads are just no longer usable. Over time, the world runs out of fuel, planes can no longer fly, you get the gist. People kind of get dropped back into this more community-based form of living and kind of dropped into this pre-industrial revolution era world. We get this story jumping all over the timeline. We see how people live in the midst of this pandemic happening, how they opt to survive, what steps they decide to take and stuff like that. On the other hand, we have the Traveling Symphony, a group of actors and musicians who travel from settlement to settlement, performing for the people of those towns and villages that they kind of find themselves in, or that they travel to, with the hope and aim of keeping art, music, and entertainment of that kind of form alive. And there's this kind of prophet who is a bit of an ominous presence. And we kind of see him escalate things and threaten the group and their way of living. And this Traveling Symphony kind of sub-story within this book overall is in the post-pandemic phase. It's kind of maybe set 10, 15, 20 years into the future after the initial flu hits the globe. So that's one of the mysteries of this book, seeing how this prophet, this kind of cult leader, is threatening the group, how those events play out. And that's, yeah, one of the mysteries of this book, just seeing what he is going to do and why he is doing what he's doing. Now, what this book is about aside, let's talk about why I didn't like it. Well, first of all, I feel like I was misled by the blurb. The blurb makes it seem like the death of this actor is an inciting incident of everything that happens, and that there is maybe a kind of mystery surrounding this event, which, as events would play out, would give answers as to why things are the way that they are now. Well, that is completely false, so don't expect it if you plan to pick this book up. The death of this actor is simply something that just happens, And it gives a reason to talk about all of these various characters and people that were part of his life or that he had met. Some of them are relevant characters in this post-apocalyptic setting. It's mainly a case of how the characters are related rather than their presence kind of leading on to give answers to some kind of greater mystery. So that was one of the disappointments, was that I didn't get the mystery that I wanted. And I have read books where that was the case, and I did really enjoy it. Like The Star and the Strange Moon. It's been a while since I read that one, so forgive me if I get the author's name wrong. I think by Constance Simmons, something like that. And that was a really, really good book with a kind of dual timeline plot device where answers and where there was a mystery, and we did get answers over the course of the book, and that was really satisfying. So based on the blurb, I was hoping that we would get that and that the story would satisfy me in that kind of way, but it did not. And for that reason, that was one of my disappointments of this book. Second of all, this book really didn't lean into the post-apocalyptic stuff enough for me. I was really hoping for something maybe a bit more akin to the Fallout games. I wasn't expecting like a lot of action or anything like you would with the Fallout kind of franchise. But I wanted to get descriptions of how hard people struggled, give vivid descriptions of desolate landscapes, the wildlife, the fauna, how nature is claiming back the earth. And there was just really hardly any of that, so that sucked. Third of all, the book was kind of boring. Without leaning into the post-apocalyptic stuff and without having a good mystery that would keep me excited to read and engaged and sprinkle in little answers and hints here and there, there wasn't much hook that kind of was there to keep me hooked and wanting to read. The only reason I got through it as fast as I did is because I am a consistent reader. I make sure to read 30 minutes in the morning and 1 to 2 hours before bed. So I do get through a considerable number of pages every day. But if I wasn't a consistent reader, I'd probably have really, really struggled to finish this book and maybe would have even DNF'd it because there just wasn't enough in here to really excite me. And even then, I didn't even find that much literary value in this book either. I think maybe if you appreciate prose more so than plot and characters, then this book may be for you. But it just didn't really do it for me. For my final few notes, the climax with this villain, the Prophet, the build up to the showdown was unsettling at times, confusing in a good way because extraordinary things were seeming to happen without much explanation, and it was quite chilling. But to be honest, the actual climax was a little bit of a letdown. Things kind of sort themselves out so quickly that it's a bit of a non-event. And things just move on so quickly after that that it didn't really satisfy me. So for all of the reasons above, for perhaps the first time on this channel, I'm rating a book 2 stars out of 5. Sebastian de Castell is an author that holds a close place to my heart. I have read a lot of his books. The first one that I ever picked up was Malevolent 7, the first book in this duology. I don't know if we are set to get another book as of yet, but it could happen, maybe, because Sebastian de Castell writes pretty consistently. After reading Malevolent 7, I read all of the Spellslinger books. I really, really love those books. Spellslinger is a young adult series about an outcast spellslinger who only has a couple tricks up his sleeve in terms of magic. The main character, Kellen, has to get by in a brutal, unforgiving world, traverse political machinations, and try to find a cure for his ailments, mainly by being cunning, outsmarting his opponents. He has one hell of a mouth on him. He is witty, great at roasting people, and an absolute brilliant main character. Each book kind of sets to have a different villain or different major events that happen in this world. So each kind of book, while they are in a series, serves well standalone. Not that you should read them standalone, but each book really excited me and gave me a solid story with a solid conclusion. Anyway, what I meant to say is that Sebastian de Castell is absolutely brilliant at writing characters. And oh boy, do I love some brilliantly written characters. Anyway, tangent aside, let's talk about what this book is actually about. Essentially, the end of the world is nigh. The fated war between heaven and hell is set upon the world, and humans are set to be the pawns. Well, our unlikely, morally awful main character Cade sets it as his mission to do the absolutely impossible and to stop it, because he thinks it's unfair that humans should fight the war between angels and devils, and he just wants to go back to a little bit of normalcy. One of the strong points in this series is magic. There is a hard magic system in which magicians are tuned to one of the various forms of magic. So people only get one form of magic that they can use. They range from being able to summon lightning, to being able to use and manipulate other people's blood, to being able to attune themselves to various types of animals, or making deals with devils to gain very, very powerful limited time use spells. There is a drawback though. Magicians, or wanderists as they are called in this book, are summoning these forms of magic from various different realms that have different physics to the regular world. At any moment, a wanderist is one bad decision, one spell away from essentially unleashing terrible destruction upon themselves. So wanderists have to be very, very careful. I like the magic system in this book because it provides a very broad playground to mess around with. It's almost like a sandbox where you can build sandcastle, you can build, a river, you can build whatever the hell you want, really. The action doesn't get stale because our cast of characters all have very different abilities, and there is always a reason to use those abilities and those spells to kind of come out on top of whatever dastardly situation has presented themselves in front of our cast of characters. So yeah, it's always really, really good fun to see how they deal with these situations, and Sebastian de Castell uses this magic system really, really well to kind of its peaks to make things fun, enjoyable, fast-paced, unpredictable, and yeah, once again, just really like the magic system. It's great. As I alluded to before, one of the great things about Sebastian de Castell's writing is his character work. He writes his characters pretty humorously, not taking himself too seriously, and bringing about plenty of laughs and quips along the way. Along their journey, the characters go through some pretty terrible ordeals, and so they form very tight connections with one another. I think the first book did a lot of heavy lifting, kind of in terms of the character work, to develop them and give a reason for them to be part of this kind of band of characters. And this book absolutely takes advantage of everything that was built up. So there aren't many backstories, expositions, and the likes, and that means the pacing is just brilliant. You get lots of great conversations between characters, a lot of action. It's just an absolute page turner, and you get to see the characters pull off some pretty nutty feats throughout this book. There is a bit of a mystery element in this book with a certain character that is insanely overpowered. They are related to Cade's past, and Cade has to work a series of things out to be able to decide the threat that they pose, whether they can end up on the same side, what their motivations may be. This particular sub-story is pretty awful, in a good way, and heartbreaking. This leads to a very satisfying climax, at least I personally thought so. Sebastian de Castell also proves that he can come up with an absolutely crazy idea and execute it flawlessly. Without giving it too much away, there is an alternate dimension in this book that is very, very different to the world that we live in, planet Earth, here. He writes the setting of this dimension so vividly, despite how complex the idea is and how complicated and unlike the real world it is. And this section of the book is absolutely beautiful, written with this kind of specific, distinct, beautiful prose. And I found that kind of section to be really, really cool and satisfying because it was a little bit different. And it showed me kind of like a little bit of a different side to Sebastian de Castell's writing, and that he can convey complex ideas and information in a solid, understandable way, and that there's more tricks to him than he can show. He is a very kind of broad and dynamic writer, and I love that for him personally, and that's great for me because I love his books, and that gives me more variety. My only real criticism of this book is that I wasn't really that interested in the romance subplot. I feel like I say that for a lot of fantasy books. It felt kind of unrealistic in this book and a little bit forced, but that aside, it's interwoven into the way that it's interwoven into the story just works, and it leads to a brilliant climax at the end of this book. Anyway, long story short, this book is absolutely brilliant. If you're in the mood for something kind of grimdark, exciting, action-packed, that brings about the mythos of angels and devils and this long-awaited kind of war between the two, this book is a must-read. It's fun, it's relatively short, pretty fast-paced. Overall, I rated this book 4 stars out of 5. Well, 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 I actually did it. I read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So, there is a little bit of a backstory for me to deciding to pick this up so soon. I did a book swap with a co-worker where I lent them 1984 in exchange for Frankenstein because Frankenstein has been on my radar for a while. And I do like to pick up the occasional classic. Classics are popular for a reason, and it's always fun to see whether I will enjoy a classic or not because they tend to be a bit of a mixed bag for me. Which makes sense because not everyone can love the same things, and there's a plethora of reasons why you can dislike and hate a book. Anyway, this story is absolutely brilliant. It's a story about a guy who is very intelligent and goes off to university to study philosophy, natural sciences, and the likes. He ends up getting really engrossed in whether you can bring life to something that is dead, has no soul, or is kind of inanimate. And he ends up putting together a creature, and upon bringing it to life is incredibly disturbed by what he has done and decides to run away upon this kind of dawn of its creation. And in doing so, he shuns the creature and leaves it to kind of go about the world and exist with its own devices in mind, really. Now, I love this book because of how angry it made me. I literally had multiple angry old man shakes fist at sky moments while reading it. In an alternate reality, Frankenstein makes an effort with this monster, teaches it about humanity, and it's a good servant to Frankenstein, feeling human connection. Everything is good, everything is happy, and everybody lives happily ever after. In reality, what happens is it is shunned from humanity because it is a wretched, hideous creation. The message here is you shouldn't judge someone or something by how it looks. Either way, what entails is a revenge story from the creature. It just wants to connect to humans, but because it has been shunned by Frankenstein, tossed aside like garbage and feared, and then been subject to the worst of humanity, it seeks to make Frankenstein suffer. We see all of these terrible things happen to Frankenstein because he had no humanity for what he created. To be honest, while some bad things happened to Frankenstein, it felt good because I was so angry at his actions that they felt deserved. Frankenstein had multiple chances at redemption and didn't take up any of them. And when I refer to Frankenstein, I'm talking about the creator of the creature, not the creature itself, just to clear up any possible confusion. At one point in the book, we get a story from the creature about everything that has happened since Frankenstein ran away from it. And this account made me so terribly sad and sympathetic and empathetic to everything it has gone through. Despite being such a supposedly wretched creature, it is so full of humanity. He makes a request to Frankenstein for a female creature so that at least he has someone to connect with and it doesn't have to live life completely alone. I love a sympathetic villain, and this book does that trope absolute justice. In my mind, though, the true villain is Frankenstein because he runs away from his creation and his actions And as he faces the consequences, he continues to run away and not take any responsibility whatsoever. There is a lot of cope from his perspective. Story aside, I was really impressed by Mary Shelley's prose. This book was written all the way back in 1818, but it is still so readable to this day. The writing style is very impressive. There are descriptions of beautiful views, contrasting to the horrible situations that happen within this book. There is appreciation of nature, of stars and stuff like that. Alongside this, Shelley progresses the plot, includes some brilliant moments and tells an absolutely fantastic tale. It's kind of hard to talk about books like this sometimes and do them justice, but I think it's an absolutely incredible book. I was really, really sucked in while reading it, almost in that way that I was hoping that I would be for Station 11. I'll keep finding moments to kind of complain about this book and joke about it. Anyway, I rated Frankenstein 5 stars out of 5. I have mentioned this before on my channel, but Myrtlewood Mysteries is one of those in-between books and series kind of series that I have. One of my goals for 2026 is to catch up to this one so I can pick up Dresden Files for the same reason, to read it in between other things. I've already talked a lot about this series on this channel because I pick up one of these books every once in a while. Essentially, to give the too long didn't read on what it is about, a mother inherits her grandmother's magical house in the town of Myrtlewood and in course starts taking on magical powers. She has to take Granny Thorne's mantle as the town witch, and as various mysteries crop up in town, she takes it upon herself to solve these mysteries, defeat the bad guys, and foil any plots that are lurking around. What I love about this series is the mother-daughter dynamic between Rosemary, the mother, and Athena, the daughter. As the series goes on, we find out that there is something very special about Athena, and this special thing takes up a lot of her life. It takes on a kind of coming-of-age story, with her coming into her own powers and her own responsibilities. This series has a lot of great things. A cozy environment in a wonderfully brilliant magical town, a magical school, vampires, werewolves, pixies, fairies, lawyers, mermaids, and mysteries, and a lot more. This series is honestly the textbook definition of cozy fantasy or cozy mystery, while not falling into the pitfalls of those genres that not a lot can tend to happen over the course of a book or said books. I'm looking at Legends and Lattes here. So, now that I've done the pitch on this series, I want to talk about what I thought about this book specifically. Well, first of all, I think a little bit less happened in this book than a lot of the other ones. It feels like maybe a setup book for whatever is about to happen next. While the events of this book are important, they're just less exciting, not as action-packed and bananas as some of the other ones. The main thing that happens in this book is that through the events, an alliance between various of the magical creatures is formed. One of the characters goes into a different realm because they are invited to a big kind of event. I think the story in this other realm was a little bit mid. Not that much happened. It wasn't exciting. There wasn't that high stakes, and things just fizzled out a little bit, which is a shame. So yeah, not much happened, which is what I can say for most of this book. Usually, in a Myrtlewood Mysteries book, the ending is absolutely bonkers. Some crazy thing usually happens at a big festival, and I enjoy the vibes, the ridiculousness of what happens. That was one of the letdowns for this book, is that it didn't have one of those crazy climactic moments. The story is about fairness, prejudice, self-discovery. I can respect it, but I didn't enjoy this book as much as the other ones, and for that reason, I give it 3 stars out of 5. Next up on my recent reads, I have the Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Surviving Medieval England. I picked this one up at the library the last time I went to visit, and I brought this with me along my travels, which I mentioned earlier. I was about halfway in by the time I got on the train, and by the time I finished, even before I finished traveling, I had finished this book. Anyway, to talk about it, this book may as well be the dictionary definition of wasted potential. We have dimension-hopping wizards who jump into medieval settings with access to technology and guns and whatever they really like. This is such a brilliant premise, Science fiction meets medieval fantasy. The biggest flaw for me in this book is the weak plot. Brandon Sanderson writes an amnesiac character who, over the course of this book, kind of discovers who he was before he hopped into this dimension he finds himself in, as well as the reason that he would have came here, because while some people do it just for fun, to be able to kind of live in a sandbox where they can alter the course of history, there is a reason why this character has hopped in, and it's not just for fun and games. The point of this book is character discovery. I kind of wish that it was not. The otherworldly narrative kind of ruined the otherwise whimsical setting and premise and made this book far more serious than it should have been for me. Was this book awful? No, not really. It just falls into the category of I mean, I read it, I guess. Really, the saddest thing for me, once again, just to double down, is the wasted potential. For a bit of something new, Sanderson makes an attempt at humor in this book. The jokes did crack me up time to time, but they were a little bit one-dimensional and do tend to go stale rather quickly. I think the jokes did make it cozy for me, and I do enjoy that kind of feeling of being cozy, but if you are not as big of a fan of that as I am, then you might just start eye-rolling sooner rather than later. For my own attempt at humor, there was too much medieval in this book and not enough wizard go pew pew. There were a couple of things that I did enjoy about this book though. The main character is great. He is a morally grey character who is great at lying and conning others. To go back to what I said about Spellslinger, that was one of the reasons I really liked that series. And I wish I got a little bit more of that in this book. I also really loved the illustrations in this book. They were absolutely brilliant. And we get these kind of extracts from the actual handbook that is given to people as they take these packages to go into medieval realms, because it's a big corporation thing. So yeah, really like the illustrations. They're super cool. Let me see if I can find one. Something like that, for example. Was it? Yep. This book is also decently short. It's a bit of a popcorn read, and it didn't overstay its welcome for me. So I'm going to put it smack bang in the middle, 3 stars out of 5. I have been wanting to read The Princess Bride by William Goldman for the longest time now. I think I heard about it around the time that I started reading again as a hobby, and having finished Frugal Wizard's Handbook, I loaded it up on my Kindle as a mood read, and oh my gosh, did I make a brilliant decision that day. The Princess Bride is a weird story to describe, because so much happens and it goes all over the place. But to try to be as concise as I can, it's a story about 2 people who are really, really overwhelmingly in love, and the path to them being together, for love to blossom and overcome everything. There are a lot of obstacles standing in the way, a lot of twists and turns. In addition to these 2 characters, it is also a story about revenge for another character. This book offers so many different things, and it does them all incredibly superbly. As I was reading the backstories for various characters, I was so incredibly sucked in. These kind of backstories reveal the motivations for various characters, show that some of them have found family in their friends. It is a story of coming together against all odds and making the impossible happen. I'm going to rip off some Goodreads reviews and list off what the book has, because I think it's a funny bit. It's got fencing, fighting, torture, poison, true love, hate, revenge, giants, hunters, good men, bad men, beautiful ladies, snakes, spiders, beasts of all natures and descriptions, pain, death, brave men, coward men, strongest men, chases, escapes, lies, truth, passion, miracles. Now, if that doesn't excite you, let me just say that the combination of all of these different things works so incredibly well. This story is so amazingly exciting pretty much all of the time, because William Goldman abridged the story and took all of the long, boring Moby Dick style exposition parts out, but I'll touch again on that in a second because it kind of trolled me a little bit. This book is actually so ridiculous. It makes use of storytelling as a format to take a lot of creative liberties to make this book exceedingly fun. What I mean by that is I thought it was going to be a lot more grounded in reality than it was, but there's a lot of these kind of superhuman feats and really kind of exaggerating things and things that are fantastical as opposed to being grounded in reality. So for example, just miracles is all I'm going to say, which I already said before. There are miracles, and these miracles aren't realistic, but they do serve to make the story more exciting and interesting. This book is set in a fictional-ish place, and what I mean by that is set in Florin, which as far as I'm aware doesn't exist, but it's meant to be somewhere between Sweden and Germany, if I recall that correctly. But some things are sprinkled in that are not factitious. And they add to the kind of the drama, to the excitement, the ridiculousness, and gives you plenty of twists and turns to keep you sucked in and not just really anticipating everything that's going to happen. And all of these kinds of twists and turns that I mentioned are just so unpredictable and impossible to see coming. And those moments either got me laughing or got me excited or at the edge of my seat. I've mentioned all of these things, but just to add the cherry on top, I found this book to be quite funny at times as well. Humor is an easy way to make it into my heart with a book, and the ridiculousness of the situations with how they're written is just absolutely incredible. I'm so happy that I've finally gotten around to reading this book. I wasn't expecting, I've heard lots of great things, but I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did for all of the reasons that people have described on the internet. And it's kicking off 2026 to be an incredible reading year for me, and is going right into my top 10 books of all time. I don't tend to reread books, but I actually see myself going back one day and picking it up again for round 2 at some point if I want maybe a bit of comfort, because while some terribly sad and disturbing things happen, the writing style, jokes, dialogue, characters, a combination of everything that exists in this book makes it feel so incredibly feel good for me. And I want to rate this book 5 stars out of 5. So up next I have Prophet Song by Paul Lynch. I picked this book up physically as a present for my partner because she's wanting to read Booker Prize winners, or sorry, award-winning books. So I thought I'd gift this to her because I went looking for stuff that was award-winning from the last 5 years, and this one kind of got me a little bit curious. So yeah, now that she's finished reading it, it was sitting all nice and snug on my physical TBR pile, so I thought I'd pick it up myself and give it a read. It was a little bit of a mood read. It was a toss-up between the next Myrtlewood Mysteries book or this one, and I thought, you know what, I'll read this, get through some of that backlog for the physical stuff I have. This book is labelled as a bit of a dystopian, and it is set in Ireland. One evening, the secret police turn up on the doorstep of Mother of 4 Eilish Stack because they want to have a discussion with her husband. And her husband is the general secretary of a trade union for teachers. They are accusing her husband of sowing dissent about the government, or the state as they call it. Well, stuff escalates, and eventually her husband decides to peacefully protest against the state for trying to disband the unions and stuff like that, and he gets arrested. Getting news about his whereabouts, his physical health and safety is impossible. It's a very dreadful and disturbing scenario. This leads to her children having to grow up in this dystopian situation without an active father, and so the mother decides to ramp up her efforts to keep the children safe in such a grim, depressing, and even though it's fairly mundane, it is a very high stakes, intense scenario. This is a really chilling story because every chapter or so, the situation just grows worse, but in a weird way where it's all matter of fact and kind of gets normalized. Of course, civil unrest grows and people aren't going to take it lying down. Rebel forces start kind of grouping up and rebelling against this tyrannical state. Violence on the street grows, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. This is a really unique story because it's from the perspective of the mother. It's akin to a story such as 1984, but focuses a lot more on the mundane aspects of being in such a situation, and it follows the kind of process of this tyrannical government kind of tightening their chokehold on the country and turning it into a kind of surveillance state, a dictatorship, stuff like that. So yeah, as I said, mundane situation. It focuses on what it's like to try and get food for the children, nappies and baby formula for the baby, stuff like that. I feel like centering a story with a male protagonist rising up against this tyrannical state is an easy way to get action fantasy story such as Red Rising. But the fact that this book doesn't do that is what makes it unique, incredibly chilling, and makes the whole situation just feel so incredibly awful. This book has some really beautiful and lyrical prose, which is a stark contrast to everything that is going on around the main character and everything that's happening in this country. The mother frequently takes a minute to just look and stare outside the window and see what's going on, how the plants and the trees are doing. It goes to show that despite what humanity is doing, nature continues in its due course. There is a lot of violence, unsettling scenes, and gore that you read about as the story escalates and moves on, and some incredibly, extremely disturbing situations that occur towards the 70 and 80% mark, and the story coalesces into a kind of depressing but also fairly realistic manner that drives home a very important message that we are all humans, and you never really know what can happen to you and when this can happen to you. It's a highly empathetic story that could really be about hundreds of thousands of people and mothers all across the world right now. This is why contemporary fiction is such a great genre for storytelling. You can get some incredibly realistic, graphic, and emotional stories about humanity in all of its ups and downs. Considering what is going on in the world at the moment, this is an incredibly terrifying book. Almost a prophecy of what can happen if humanity sits by idle as these kinds of atrocities are allowed to happen without intervention at many of its stages. The other crazy thing is that it points a finger at history. These kinds of events have already happened before and we can overcome them. As I said, it's a very chilling story, and anything can happen in the world at any time, and it really goes to show. There isn't really anything I didn't like about it, but maybe it's just a bit too depressing and mundane, which I kind of said is one of its strong points, for me to consider it a 5-star read. But this is an incredibly amazing novel, nevertheless, and probably one for the history books. So I rate this one 4 stars out of 5. Formidable Magic is the next book in the Myrtlewood Mysteries series. I've already talked about this series previously in the video, so I'm not about to talk about it again in great depth. Just to throw out my vague thoughts, this one had a solid mystery, some good spooky season vibes, so I could see this being a great book to read in spooky season if you can time reading all the other ones before it up until that point. And yeah, so it's because like the timeline leads up to All Hallows Eve or Halloween, and it's called Samhain in this book. There was some great drama, some great action, a really good mystery that builds up in a satisfying way. I'm really happy that finally we get back to another good book, because it feels like the last maybe 1 or 2 weren't that great, relatively speaking, on the series. So yeah, really glad that this one was enjoyable, or more enjoyable, and actually a good return to the peak of Myrtlewood Mysteries. So I rate this one 4 stars out of 5.
Currently reading. So basically what happened was I plugged in my new microphone and tried to record this clip, or this series of clips about Assassin's Apprentice, and it just didn't really work because the audio is not there. So I'm going to do a little voiceover, and I hope you enjoy me explaining why I want to read it in double speed. Essentially, one of my reading goals is to read the entire Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb in 2026. It's about this guy called Fitz, who has a power to kind of use the senses of animals and talk to them, but this kind of power is frowned upon, and he's given the opportunity to essentially not use them and learn how to become a courtly guy, a royal, and he learns how to read, write, fence, swordplay, and become an assassin. I've heard it's very, very character driven, and I love character driven, so that excites me. One of the other things that really, really excites me about the series is its length. I'm a One Piece fan, so long as that time investment is worth it, I am all in. I'm really excited to read the entirety of the Realm of the Elderlings saga over the course of a few years, so you can join me in this journey, and we can talk about it together. It will be a good time, and yeah, let's do it.
Gotta read this, man.
Next up, I have In Ascension by Martin McInnes. So, this is another book on my physical TBR. You see, I've got the physical book here. This book is the winner of the Arthur C. Clarke Award in 2024, and also a Goodreads Choice Award nominee in the same year. Picking this up for £1 at a charity shop was an absolute bargain. This is a science fiction novel about a microbiologist that investigates a vent deep down on the ocean floor. She makes a discovery that causes her to essentially make her way upwards in her career by getting involved in bigger and more impressive scientific investigations across her life that eventually gets her peering into the biggest questions the universe has to answer. This sounds like a solid book that mixes together a character-driven narrative with a solid mystery that unravels over the course of the book. The mystery sounds much larger than life, and that excites me because if this book does it well, the conclusion to the mystery could be very satisfying, and go back to what I was saying about Star on the Strange Moon and then why I was disappointed with Station 11. I love a satisfying conclusion to a big mystery, and this mystery sounds grander than life, to be honest, because all of these, she makes some discoveries on the ocean floor that then get her like investigating different things in the same vein to answer the same questions, kind of thing. That's what it sounds like. Part of the Goodreads summary says this about this book. Exploring the natural world with the wonder and reverence we usually reserve for the stars, In Ascension is a compassionate, deeply inquisitive epic that reaches outward to confront the greatest questions of existence, looks inward to illuminate the smallest details of the human heart, and shows how, no matter how far away we might be and how much we have lost hope, we will always attempt to return to the people and places we call home. That sounds really endearing and heartwarming, and as a cozy book fan, I love that kind of vibe to a book, and it sounds really up my alley. So as I said, it sounds like a really character-driven novel that explores themes of home and family. And once again, I'm just really excited about the sci-fi elements in this book. It sounds like a really good combination of a lot of things that I like. And so hopefully once I read this, it does not disappoint and delivers everything that I hope for. Once I get around to reading this book, I will definitely be sure to check into YouTube and let you guys know my thoughts, whether it's in another Talking Books video or as a dedicated review. I feel like I've not done one of those in a while. Wake up, honey! A new sci-fi novel written by the author of Dungeon Crawler Carl is coming out. Sign me up. So, Dungeon Crawler Carl is one of my favorite series at the moment, and I'm very, very keen to read a new standalone book written by this absolute Chad of an author. Anyway, jokes aside, what is this book about? Well, this book follows Oliver Lewis, a normal dude who is living on an Earth-like planet, and all he wants to do is live a nice, relaxing life, tending to his family ranch, maybe playing some shows with his band, and all over, just have a normal life. That's really the gist of it. Now, the politicians of Earth and corporations make a deal with this planet to open up the gates, a portal, to set up a kind of alliance, maybe with some trade agreements, stuff like that. But as soon as the gates to this world are open, the backstabbing begins. Operation Bounce House is set to commence. These corporations, who prioritize profits over everything else, set up a project to allow humans, especially gamers, to design all of these crazy war machines and use them to invade this planet that Oliver lives on and evict its rightful residents. So, the stage is set. With just the help of his grandfather and a bucket of rusty parts, Oliver must do what he can to defend his planet from the invading forces of people in war machines and probably mech suits, if I had to guess. We know gamers love a bit of sciencey tech type stuff. This book is fairly short for a Matt Dinnerman book, and as I have already mentioned, a standalone novel. So, I am super excited to pick this one up on release and give it a read. I love the segments in Dungeon Crawler Carl where Carl comes up with some sort of crazy plan, and I feel like these segments are one of his strong points for the series because Matt Dinnerman is so good at writing them. Well, I am glad that Matt Dinnerman is sticking to his guns and writing a book that uses that as one of its major points because it's going to be creative, there's going to be high stakes, and I hope most of all that is going to be fun. Matt Dinnerman is also great at writing corporate level politics in his books, and so I am so ready to get super angry at these companies and also get engrossed in the ways that these corporations set up and execute Operation Bounce House. I imagine it's going to be a really good kind of cat and mouse game or cops and robbers, good versus evil. And I'm just excited to see the way that Matt Dinnerman writes this into his story and gets me really stuck into this world. And yeah, I'm just really interested in this kind of like Earth-like planet being a thing as well. It sounds quite interesting and a little bit new. So yeah, as I said, I'm going to read this one on release and hopefully I shall get a review over in your direction. Thank you for watching this video. If you have made it this far, I really appreciate you for sticking around for the entirety of this absolute behemoth of a talking books video. And I hope that it's your lucky day for somebody to gift you a physical book today. Please drop a comment below letting me know what you have read recently, what you thought of those books, and what you're currently reading too. I reply to all of my YouTube comments, so let's have a chat down below. I have a bunch of various social media in the description below, such as my Instagram page, a TikTok, my Goodreads, and my Storygraph, so feel free to go connect with me over there outside of the YouTube platform. I hope that you enjoyed your beverage and potentially whatever else you have been doing alongside this video. Anyway, that is enough yapping from me, and I will leave you now. Be sure to check back in next time. Anyway, Root out.